Something you've contemplated or thought about or whatever, because I was going to include that in my talk too. Yes.
Use the microphone.
Oh. Can't hear me?
Yeah. Well, something.
All right. Okay. All right. So first, I'm going to read a little bit from the book Amazon Hitchhiker. This is the true story. This happened in the 1970s. I hitchhiked from Canada down to Mexico and took trains and buses and whatever, and met some people and was trying to get to Brazil. So we met some people who said, hey, we'll just buy a canoe and go, you know, let's paddle to Brazil. So, well, why not? You know, I was 21 years old. Okay. All right, so this is, so we were in the canoe for months, a long time. So this, what I'm going to read for you is just a section of when we were actually traveling in the canoe. Turn on the wheels of a wilderness our forefathers destroyed. Fall beneath the leaves of emerald trees, resting in the sands of time, where came and bite, our hero of the dark, Putumayo. We were paddling on the Putumayo River. The Putumayo River borders Ecuador, Peru, and Colombia, and eventually ends up in Brazil. I was coming from Colombia at this point, so we started in Colombia, but we were on the canoe for a while before we get to this point in the book. It's almost impossible to explain how it feels to be lost in the middle of nowhere, with no end in sight. Dawn began with the morning songs of exotic wild birds as the sun peeked over our lifeline, the muddy Putumayo River. We ate a meager breakfast of leftovers from supper the night before and set out in our leaky dugout canoe, each taking turns paddling until we became too tired. Exhausted and wondering if we were ever going to find an end to this river adventure, we were rewarded when loud calls from above revealed a brilliantly colored, large flock of scarlet-tailed macaws flying overhead. Their joyous freedom in flight was contagious. They inspired us to continue on through this ever-changing, dangerous green wilderness. As the day neared an end, we came to a place that had enough cleared land to camp on. But Captain Jose Pizarro, who was now at the stern, imagining himself the Spanish conquistador, insisted it wasn't good enough. He steered us downriver, past some small trees, announcing, "There's a better place to camp a little further on." Of course, he'd never been there before. The rest of us were ready to stop, but too tired to argue with him. We rounded the next bend of the river and looked ahead to see nothing but dense rainforest. Resting on the narrow shoreline, beneath the dropping tangle of vines, we saw several young black caiman, no more than 2 feet long, lying in wait for prey. Now, if you don't know, caiman is a crop-back alligator. I looked down at the muddy water below us and imagined all of the larger caiman we couldn't see, waiting and watching our rotting chiclet canoe pass by. To make matters worse, Jose began to talk about hunting crocodiles that night because their skins were worth so much money. We continued on paddling until we found ourselves in a narrow, calm, very shallow part of the river where our dugout canoe got stuck, truly stuck. Chiclet, our canoe was called Chiclet, which is explained in the book otherwise, refused to move an inch until everyone got out of their canoe to push her across the big sandbar we were trapped on. The river shore was now lined on both sides with several big 10-foot, hungry-looking black caiman watching us. Knowing that black caiman have excellent sight and can travel 30 miles an hour in water, I didn't want to get out, but had no choice. I was the last one to leave the safety of our canoe because I was terrified. Bravely, we pushed and shoved until we finally moved Chiclet into the deep, murky water. I don't know how we made it out of there alive, but somehow we did. Perhaps we were too many and too loud for the silent, staring reptiles to dare attack. Jose didn't talk about crocodile hunting again. We were exhausted. As the sun was about to set, we heard screams and loud voices of people. Was someone having a party by the river? Ahead of us on the Peruvian shore, we saw a tiny bamboo hut. So we pulled in, tied up Chiclet, and climbed up the hill to the hut. We were met by a man with a frightening grin, waving a bloody machete. There was blood everywhere. Terrified, I was sure he was going to murder us. But instead, it turned out that he was smiling because he'd just killed a huge capybara. The party screams we had heard were the cries of the poor animal being slaughtered. His wife and 2 children watched us approach as they prepared a fire to cook the animal. Capybara, adults can weigh over 100 pounds and grow to be 4 feet long and 2 feet tall. Their web feet make them excellent swimmers. These cute herbivores look very much like the giant cousins of the guinea pig. I felt sorry for the poor creature. After each savage slaughter I witnessed on the river, I became more and more sure I should return to being a vegetarian. I'd been a vegetarian after my travels in India a few years before and had only started eating meat again while traveling in Central America, because it was the food that was offered to me. And to refuse would have been an insult. I wondered how humans could be so inhumane in the jungle. Hunting was part of survival, but the killing didn't have to be done in such a brutal, cruel way. The man with the machete told us about a larger farm a little further on. His little bit of land was so small it wasn't even big enough to put up my pup tent. We set off again, exhausted as we were. I was glad we were leaving his blood-stained plot. We zigzagged slowly down the river. I was so tired I could hardly lift my paddle. It was almost dark when we came to a little farm. So I'm going to read just that gives you a taste of the book, a feel for the book. I put together these sheets because I thought there were going to be some people that would be interested in possibly writing their memoir. So if you're considering that, please, I'll give the sheet and I'll try to discuss it.
I can.
Oh, thank you so much.
Sure.
Yeah. Thank you. Pass those back. So I'll give you a little history about my book now, because writing my I started writing this book, and I really wasn't quite sure exactly how it was going to go or where it was going to go. Have any of you written a book or a memoir? Have you thought about what you want to do and how you want to do it? Okay, so, all right. I love Dave Barry's quote, walking to the corner store can be interesting if well written. You know, whether you've lived in the same house your entire life and never done anything, you can still have an interesting memoir if you write it well. So basically, this is a travel memoir. Writing a travel memoir involves reflecting on your personal travel experiences and how those experiences changed or shaped your life. I spent much of my life adventuring all over the world. Okay, so this book, Amazon Hitchhiker, takes place when I was 21, which was a couple of years ago. But when COVID came, I'm stuck at home. The first month I ate potato chips and watched TV, and then I thought, I can't keep this up. Who knows how long we're going to be in lockdown. So then I said, no, this is the time to write this book I've been planning to write for 40 years. So I sat down and started to write it. First of all, I dug up my old journals, and I hope when you travel, whether you travel or whether you don't do anything, it's a great idea to keep a journal. Even if you just write just a little bit in it, it'll trigger your mind to remember things from the past. The tiny details that can be forgotten, or can be recorded actually in your journal without even realizing what you're doing. I also, my mother saved all my letters that I'd sent home from my travels, so that was great help too. So I did that. I also did research on the actual countries I was in and what was happening now compared to then, and that was how I started writing. Just going from my journal. Contact people you met traveling. Now, sometimes when you travel, you meet a whole lot of people and you never see them again, but some of them, one or two, you stay in touch with. In fact, this November in Victoria, Canada, I got together with some of my canoe mates from the Amazon Hitchhiker trip. We don't see each other often, but we still stay in touch. So I had contacted them online, via messaging them, asking them what they remembered and how they felt. I asked them how they felt about my writing the book, and they all thought it was great. You know, nobody had any reservations about it, so it was. They were happy to be involved. But if anybody isn't keen on your writing about them, you can just not write it. You can not include them or change the name. I use real names, but I didn't use any last names in my book, so that was one thing I did. Also, they're going to remember stupid things you did that you don't remember. You know, those funny things. You know? Yeah. So your point of view needs to be unique. This needs to be your perspective on what you're writing about. Even though it's something everybody else may have experienced, you want to write something that you have a perspective about. And remember that when you're writing a travel memoir, this is not a guidebook. You don't have to talk about every tourist location you went to and everything that you did. This is your perspective. So it's more about how these things affected you and how it reflects your journeys and how they transformed you is what your memoir should be. Another thing that's really important is to be honest, be truthful. It's so easy to lie about, or to just, your mistakes, because what makes a book interesting are the embarrassing globetrotting blunders, you make. That makes the book authentic and interesting. The best stories paint vivid, well-chosen words. Okay, so this is a technical thing. Colorful descriptions and metaphors, occasionally, can make the book very exciting and very interesting. Using dialogue, even if it's just a line here and a line there, that brings it to life too. You want to keep things in the, you want to use your active voice. Adjectives add color, but too many adjectives can unburden the story. So also, when you're writing, and too many adverbs as well, even a simile, you can have too many. You want the story to flow so people read and feel like they're actually there too. If you're not quite sure how to do that, go ahead and read some travel memoirs that you admire, that you like. Read some and they'll give you some ideas. I know a lot of people when they go to write a book, they think, they're doing some research, they use it there. So that's a good word. It's this huge word that might be a wonderful word, but nobody ever uses it. So use words that people can, they don't have to keep going to a dictionary to read your book. The main thing is, be brave, be honest, reveal a little piece of your soul. I think, is that 5 minutes?
No, I had a question.
Oh, okay. Okay. Sorry, I was rushing through to finish.
Are there any travel memoirs that you could recommend or that you read in preparation for writing your own?
I've read quite a few. Actually, if you go to my blog, and if you go to my website, which is the bottom here, and then go to Alycin's adventure blog, and this, something very similar to this is there. You can click on that and that'll open up. But there are just so many good books that can't think of anything right at the moment. But it was useful to read. Well, it doesn't have to be similar, but just to get ideas. Yeah. How are we doing for time, by the way?
You're good.
Okay.
So
Okay. Okay.
7 minutes.
7 minutes. Okay. All right. Let's see. So my book, I've been very lucky. This book has been, it's got a 5-star rating. It's got over 60, 5-star reviews. It was a bestseller when it first came out on Amazon, and Louis' bestseller. And I originally just wrote it so my son would have a record of the trip, because on this trip, this is a secret, you don't need to know till you read the book, but yeah, this is where I met his father on this adventure. Yeah. I think I'll go now. We've got about 5 minutes. So any questions about writing, about my adventures, about travel? I mean, I did survive. That's obvious. Yeah.
When you set out, you kept journals, right?
Yes.
Were you thinking in the back of your mind that you were going to write this book someday?
Oh, absolutely. I was sure I was going to write it right away.
Oh.
It just took me a long time to actually get down to do it. But yeah. I've always, when I was a kid, I kept a diary, and then as a teenager, I love this guy or something. I mean, I've kept journals on that. But then on the trip, it was really helpful reading back, because some of the things that I'd completely forgotten were still were in the journal. And a couple of times when I talked to some people, I said, "Do you remember when we did so and so?" and they say, oh yeah, do you remember what you, and, you know, so it was, yeah, the journal is vital. It really is vital. Yeah. Yes?
Do you ever see yourself bridging from memoir to fiction, or are you going to stay in the nonfiction genre?
Well, I have written, I mean, this book is fiction. It's a children's book. It actually was inspired by, I gave a little boy with autism and cerebral palsy riding lessons on my Mustang horse, and they had immediate connection. So this book is not that story, but it's about this boy gets lost and finds, a mild Mustang horse finds him and takes him to a special place. So I did some fiction, but I'm working on a collection of short stories right now. Now, so far they're all nonfiction short stories, but I have written some other fiction, but I haven't had any fiction published outside of this children's book. Yes?
In the years since, however many or few since you were 21, has writing been your primary vocation, or have there been other careers?
I've always written, but I really didn't start seriously writing and be published until I had this book. Well, no, there's one other book, I wrote a book on gourd music and how to play gourd instruments, which came out right when YouTube came out, so everyone used YouTube instead. But no, that was my first, and this is my second book, Milo and the Mustang. Yeah. But this has been in the past, past 10 or 15 years. I've been publishing my writing, but I've always written something. I write poetry, write different things.
Thank you.
Yes.
Because you are always writing, how do you decide what you're going to publish? Like,
well, I don't publish my journals, no, but they're more like a guideline, like your Cole's Notes kind of thing. Yeah, I've written, I can look at my journal and then decide, but mostly I wanted to tell this story because it's such an incredible adventure. Yeah, it's an incredible adventure that I'll never repeat and can't be repeated anymore either, because when I was there were basically no people there, hardly. I mean, very few, a few kind of pioneer settlers along the river, but there were no people there. I recently read a book called Amazon Woman, and I've been communicating with her. She canoed, or she kayaked actually, from Peru all the way down to the mouth of the Amazon, which is an incredible journey. But she was constantly seeing people, meeting people. The Amazon has changed so drastically, in the past 40 years. It was a wild time when I was there. And of course there was no email or internet or GPS or any of that, it was just, we were just crazy fools adventuring. Yes?
I just wanted to tell you all, I've been in Allison's pod, and it's a memoir pod.
It's our writing group, yeah.
The writing group.
Mm-hmm.
And I've gone through this book with her, and it's just exciting as can be. I mean, it really is good. So I just wanted to tell you that. And if you're interested in writing something, that every one of us has a story to tell. And I'm telling my story, and it's at the publisher now. So, but it'll be a while. So, but it's really good to get help with other people that are interested in the same thing.
Yes, and that's a good point, because you can show it to your family, or you say, oh, it's wonderful, Mom, it's wonderful, whatever. They'll say it's wonderful. But you really do need to get an objective opinion, yes, on someone who, and of course you also have to have an editor and edit the book, and the cover, my cover designer is Bulgaria, and she's from Bulgaria, and my editor was in South Africa. I mean, you can do things all over the world now, but with the internet and connecting, but yeah, those are important things. But yes, the pod was very helpful, because it's Gainesville Writers Alliance, which is putting this festival on. We have 4 people in our pod, and we meet every 2 weeks, and we share what we've written, And if you get a comma, they'll say, oh, there's a comma missing there, or think, can you? But what was really useful was when people said, I don't understand that. What do you mean? Because especially when you're writing a memoir, you know exactly what happened, and it's not always apparent that the other person reading it doesn't. So that was very helpful too.
Yes.
So then I would rewrite it to make it more clear, so somebody else could read it that wasn't actually there. Yes?
When you're writing, do you tend to write like linear chronology, or do you have a tendency to remember events and cobble them together, or both?
Yes, I did not do linear chronology. I jumped all over the place, so it was chapter here. And then I had to put it all together in some kind of linear chronology. chronology, but I didn't write it that way. I was more like writing this story and this adventure, and then put it together. You know. And then, of course, then I had to get it in chapters in order. You know. But everybody's different. But it's really important if you're going to write, and I think several of you want to write, pick a time that's good for you to write. Like I write in the morning, you know, and particularly when I was working on this book, I would drink my cup of coffee and then I would go write. So I was writing at the same time every day. You have to treat it like a job. Like during COVID, that was really easy. There were no distractions. But, you know, I would sometimes write for 14 hours if I was on a roll, you know, and sometimes it'd be less. But it's good to say, you know, and another member of our pod, he likes to write late, so he writes at midnight. You know, that wouldn't work for me. But you pick a time that works for you and write every day. Even if you don't accomplish very much, just, you know, get in, treat it like a job, treat it like something, get a routine.
All right.
Can I have
Thank-
one little thing about publishing then?
Yes.
Do you pick a publisher who seems to be publishing in your genre? How did you go about getting a publisher?
Okay, this book was published by an indie house publishing company,
Okay.
Equitable Productions, yes, yeah, which is small and very small, and was actually had been around since the 1970s. That's. I guess I need to go now. See the next person's here, but, but I'm at table 19. And if anybody's interested in the book or wants to discuss more or have more ideas or more questions, I'd be happy to talk to you. Yeah, I don't want to take over the next person's time.
Alycin Hayes, everybody. Thank you so much.
Thank you very much for coming.